everybody. Ouch. So I was actually gonna change the thumbnail on this one because I was like, oh well, maybe I should not just be having blank OBS virtual camera as my thumbnail, but I accidentally clicked go live instead of retake thumbnail or whatever it is. So feeling a lot better today, heaps better. Um, And I'm just gonna get into this and see what's up today. Oh, I love the Five of Swords and Justice at the cut. That feels really good. That feels like a reclaimed masculine energy that is now seeking to undo, redo, make better. Clarinda! Yes! I was gonna send you. So, because of the time difference, it's actually gonna be my mom's birthday and your birthday at the same time, even though it's like, because you're a whole day ahead of us. Oh, goodness. But that Five of Swords and Justice feels like a reclaimed masculine energy that is now in a space to make better certain things. How are you doing, Clarinda? Yeah, I was thinking about it earlier today. I was like, oh, I can tell my mom and Clarinda happy birthday at the same time. The Nine of Swords just came out. Okay, but this at the bottom again. Okay. So it feels like an energy. It's like if you're a dude, you can probably relate. If you're not a dude, you can still probably relate. It's an energy of like when you're really upset, when you're really emotionally charged, and you do something or you say something that you regret later. And the regret, it's mostly a feeling of like after you're not in that space, it's like, man, like I wish I would have done it differently. I wish I would have said it differently type of energy. It isn't necessarily like because it feels like at the time in the moment we were doing the best that we could with what we have. And whatever we were led to believe, we were led to believe. No. I hope Zaya gets to feeling better. You have Miss E for 3 days, like 3 more days. Has Master C been there as well? It feels like that clarity after taking some space, and it's like now there's coming in an energy of atonement with the Nine of Swords and this Five of Swords still at the bottom of the deck, and with Justice being at the cut with the Five of Swords earlier. There's an energy of atonement and rectification. That's what it is. I was like, not reconciliation. Uh, atonement and rectification. And it's so interesting because for your birthday too, he comes after school. Okay. So the schools are open again? Because I know he was doing the virtual for a while. Because I remember you talking about it. And it's like I saw one news report waiting on the vet to get back to you. Well, hopefully he gets feeling better, a lot better here soon. He's such a little trooper. Such a trooper, super soldier doggy. Um, and I was like, ugh, and I rolled my eyes. And then I go back and I see another news thing. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cute. And in the show that I'm watching, I just watched it with my little brother. And I am stressed out. I'm like stressed AF watching this show because there's someone who just does all kinds of things without really thinking about it. And even though it's in the show right now, I think it's relevant ish in the sense of like in the show, there are two different sides. Well, there's one side that's never even known the story. There's another side that was told a certain version of the story. And now it's like uh, basically when we're raised to be a product of our environment and when emotionally there is a lack of an ability to kind of empathize or to connect in a certain way. because of the narrative that's been told and spun, then how it shapes us ethically, how it shapes our ethics and morality when it's like certain people deserve certain things literally based on the conditions of their birth and other people deserve better. And then it comes in like it's almost like a respectability politics type of thing where it's like, well, I'm going to do this to be seen as such by the people who can give me something that those other people can't give me. So I'm going to play the game and turn against them to try to win some favor over here, and how it just leaves all sides broken. Um, 5-day lockdown, but they're back in class for now. Breakouts under control, thank goodness. See, that must be like, I wonder what that experience is like. Because over here, like, we haven't gone through super strict lockdowns. I wouldn't say breakouts are necessarily have ever been under control. I don't even know if controlling breakouts was honestly ever really a priority over here. Um, But that's kind of sort of the way that America handles crises. We don't handle it by addressing it or by doing anything. We just kind of sort of like run its course and then get used to it. Like, all of the mass shootings and things like that. And it's like, okay. Well, at least with this, there's a little bit, we can vaccinate, we can wear masks, we can do other things. When it comes to people and their guns, you can't do anything about that. And because it's their right to be able to take life as easily as they please and whatever quantity apparently that they want to do it. It's not about that. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just I don't know. It's a version of the experience that I don't have. So I'm curious. I don't know like if a period of stricter lockdowns with like actual releases of restrictions. Yeah, we don't. I mean, we do, but you know, do we? Um, they actually have them in a lot of places, believe it or not. Just one of the many ways that we are behind the rest of the world. But we'll catch up because we have to. um, but yeah, anyway, there's an energy of like a reconstitution is word, not reconciling, not recompense, not restitution. I said it before. I forget what it was. With masculine energy kind of sort of coming to clean itself up. And masculine energy can be the system of governments, it can be laws, anything like organizational or structural, anything that kind of sort of exists. I don't want to say outside the realm of human connection because it seems like a lot of masculine energies, it's like uh house energy where like the feminine is Cancer is the home, it's everything inside of the house. Masculine energy is like the house, it's the integrity of the house, it's the plaster and the drywalls and the window frames, it's the, what do you call them when you get the stud finder, the beams that support, it's everything that supports the house. And so like we live inside of all of these masculine type systems, but they don't really take as much of an element of like interconnectedness or like the experience that you're going to have into consideration. And so it's a time and an energy for that to be more of a forethought rather than it just kind of sort of like falling apart at the end. So yeah, that's interesting. 5 of Swords, Justice, 9 of Swords. All right. Oh, the angel came out. The angel is Temperance. Bottom of the deck now is the 5 of Pentacles. 5 of Pentacles. It's a little bit of a tantrumy energy. Feels like a I'll show you type of energy. I don't know why. I was thinking about earlier. I was thinking about BDE because don't ask why. And I had a friend. who was talking to me about BDE. And he was talking about having BDE. And I was like, you don't have BDE. And he was like, but I have a BD. And I was like, you can have a BD and have SDE or like MDE, but you don't have BDE. And it's an energy. It's not like whether you physically feel physiologically have a BD or not. It's about your energy. And BDE is more so like when you see a dude with like a large car that like he revs and it makes a lot of noise, that's a dude that people go, oh, like, oh, he's trying to compensate for something. He must have, a SD. And so that's SDE. And so it's about not compensating. It's about being genuinely, truly, authentically, and confidently yourself more than anything else. That's what makes, that's what lends itself to BDE. BD, it's we'll call it we'll use scientific words, okay? We'll use the anatomical phrasing. So large penis energy, that's what BDE is, but you replace, the B with large, the D with penis, and energy is energy. Um and he was like, "Well, I have a BD." And I was like, "Yeah, but you don't have BDE. Like you don't." Like I'm gonna be honest with you. You're a Sagittarius. I think you'll appreciate the honesty. I don't think he appreciated the honesty. Yeah, it's fine, Clorinda. It's fine. And it's like even on when I used to play MMOs back in the day, they'd be like when people would post their damage numbers or whatever, it's like, oh, they're flexing their EPeen. So it's like BDE, but like electronic virtual. And it's an energy of compensation. And I think that's what this is with the Five of Pentacles and it like being balanced out now. It's an energy of compensating. And like a stripper. Now, I think a lot of strippers have like BDE. I don't think you can be a successful stripper and not have BDE because it plays into the whole fantasy of it, right? You don't actually have to have one. Like, I guess you can strip with SDE, but I don't think anyone would stick around long enough to see, like, what's actually under the hood. Anyway, it's about confidence in yourself. It's about showing up as yourself, and it's about not having anything to compensate for. And when you don't have anything to compensate for, you act differently, you behave differently, you show up differently, you interact and engage differently, and you respond not here. And when you respond to things, you don't do so by immediately jumping into the ego or immediately jumping on the defensive or thinking that someone's attacking you, thinking that someone's like belittling your intelligence or whatever, right? It's just you just show up different, you act different, you just carry that certain air about you. You just have that je ne sais quoi, right? And that's BDE. It's just like comfortable in your own skin, and maybe there are some other things on top of it. Not the ones I've seen, Clorinda. Clorinda. um. Oh, look at this New World Order. I think that was the Giver. Hold up, wait. Oh, I lost it. Yeah, it is the Giver. Okay, Six of Pentacles with the Magician at the bottom and New World Order that came out. The world card in this deck is New World Order. This is a new way of doing things. Again, like with masculine energy being sort of the structures and the systems that we live under, it would be a completely new way to experience things. And it's in a more balanced way, in a more harmonious way, in a way that honors the strengths of others. It honors differences. And when differences are more collectively honored, then the people who live under those systems don't feel like they have to compensate as much, right? If society doesn't sort of unequally value certain things, or if society is just generally more accepting, there's less pressure for someone to conform to be something else or to do something else. so we can all have BDE. And then it's not even a thing anymore. It's just people being people. I don't know. I'm starting to reach the point where I've talked too much. I can feel the rasp. I can feel the rasp in my throat. Oh, it's reaching that point though where it's like my chest is starting to remember the cough. Like I've had bronchitis several times in my life. Thankfully, it's not that bad, and I'm doing better. It's just like a lot of mucus, and I'm like, where does it all come from? And it's sticky. I'm just like, oh, sorry. TMI probably. Okay. So now the Ebony Shield is here with New World Order still at the bottom. It feels like a gift from Spirit. It feels like inheriting or coming into the space of inheriting the world that we deserved all along or that we should have gotten all along. Because we're becoming those who are worthy or capable of living in it type of energy. It's like no, Clarinda, I lit some incense the other day that I was probably partially allergic to. I lit almost a whole stick and my windows were closed and my door was closed. I had absolutely no ventilation. And I didn't even notice it until it started hitting me later in the day. And I'm just sitting here chilling in my room. And I opened up both of my windows and my door, turned on the fan, and the smell was in here like all night. So, plus, I used to get bronchitis every time the seasons changed. It hasn't happened in like 2 years. But I think the incense, on top of everything else, it was just the perfect recipe for a disaster. And so I'm getting better. That was a few days ago. Yeah, if you've seen me in the past 2 days. Yeah. And it's not even on the good stuff though. It was just like some regular incense. Well, maybe I was. I don't know. I don't know. And then my sinuses just started acting up. Sinus pressure had my head feeling like it was about to explode sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh. And when I got my cataracts done, like my eye pressure went up in my left eye. I was like temporarily blind. I was blind for like 30 seconds. I can drink liquids now without it burning my throat. So, that's a plus. And the air is extremely dry, but it's also wintertime. So that didn't help either. Um, my eye pressure went up and I was blind for like 30 seconds. So I get out of surgery. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I can like see the world. Like what? And then later that night, cut to me like in the bathroom, about to throw up. My eye hurts, and then I go blind. And 30 seconds is a long time when you're in a not great situation. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? Like, was it worth it? Was it worth like going blind? And I was like, okay, let me calm down. And then I'm over here like, they didn't even tell me that was a possibility. Why didn't anybody say anything to me? Blah, 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 blah. And then I go for my check-in and they were like, well, we gave you a number to call if anything happened. Like, why didn't you call the number? And I was like, oh. I didn't think about that. Good point. Why didn't I call the number? Um, and so I guess in general, if I try to relate that as I do everything, it's like this feeling of like we have everything that we need. There's an energy of like whenever we do something in our best interest. We do it because we think it's going to benefit us. We do it because we think it's going to move us forward, but we don't know 100% how it's going to play out. And so at the jump, it can be amazing, but then there could be a period where I'm gonna have to end this soon because I'm talking too much. But then there's a period after we get accustomed to the immediate benefits, and then the reality begins to sink in. And this is this energy. This is like reality sinking in energy. Because anyone can like do something, like anyone can take a step, right? Anyone can dip their toe into the water and then pull it out immediately because it's too hot or it's too cold or it's not exactly to their liking. And it's not that it takes a special type of person, but when we make it to this point, like we're like in the pool. We're walking. We're not just taking a step and then immediately going back. And there are things that are kind of sort of there for us, but when you're in the moment, you don't really remember that those resources are there because the brain prioritizes survival. And that's one of the things that have sort of led us here. Yeah. Right. And honestly, like when I got out, because they told me some stuff beforehand. And when I came out, she was reading the thing and she was like, and there's a number on there if anything happens. But in that time, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can see what. I wasn't even listening to her really. I'm just like, yeah, yeah, okay, thanks. And so there is an energy of like, it's there when we need it, but in the moment, we may not necessarily recognize it. And that also goes back to that pre recompense energy. I can't remember the word I said. I have one more cough drop. I might pop it. I mean, there's more in the closet, but I don't want to be just constantly popping cough drops. In the moment, there are just things that we don't realize, we don't think about. And then it's that after, like, kind of sort of, if we're talking about BDE, let's talk about post coital clarity. And if you don't know what post-coital clarity is, it's like when you're in the moment and your hormones and your what do you call them? When the not hormones, pheromones. When the pheromones got you aroused and engaged, and then you act on it, and then after you act on that initial attraction or whatever, when you come back to your senses, you're like, oh, mm. Or you're like, oh, gonna do that one again. That's that post-coital clarity. It happens after whatever the system is flooded with is released. When you're emotional, when there's something that you intensely desire, whatever, when the body wants either physical or emotional or even mental, what it wants, it'll prepare the body for engagement with that. And in the preparation of that engagement, you kind of sort of lose other facilities. It's like it diverts the power from those other facilities, right? When you divert all your power to phasers, then your shields go down because you just took the power from shield. So if you get hit, then you're donezo. But if whatever. Exactly. And so there comes a point of time of like learning. And I think this is after we've learned. We inherit this world because we're in a position to create it. And not only to create it, but to sustain it. Queen of Pentacles, very sustaining energy. And that's when we sort of step into it. Oh, and look at the cut. There's the Empress. Excuse me. Now, this is an energy, that feminine energy is like, okay, I will work with you. Because that LDE, that SDE, that MDE, even energy, Empress is like, I ain't messing with you unless you got BDE. And you ain't got to have a BD, but you got to have BDE. And if you don't have a BD, then the least you could do is have some BDE. right? I'm just because it's all about confidence more than anything, and it's about knowing how to work with what you got. And there are some people who just are very proficient at utilizing their tools, and other people who think that because they have the latest tool, then it's, whatever. But the latest tool in the hands of a fool is not that great of an experience. And it's like, man, that BD is wasted on you. Didn't necessarily think I'd be talking like this today, but we are, I guess. It's like, man, all that D and you don't know how to use it. It must be tragic. And then dudes be like, "Oh, but I have a whatever, man. Like, she's crazy, bro. Like, look at me. Why doesn't anyone want me?" And it's like, look at you. If you looked at yourself, you would know why. Ooh, I'm gonna end it on these two. I wanted to have two cards for an I Ching. So the Knight of Cups and the Journeyman. I should have known that. And the Knight of Chalices, the Shining Dew, is looking back at the Journeyman. This is like some kind of spirit-led operation because the Journeyman is all about mastery. It's about self-mastery and it's about practice. It's not about perfection, it's about practice, because the more you practice, the better you get at it, right? And so maybe you've had spiritual BDE, right? Like maybe you've gone through your life as a certain intuitive, or you've gone through your life with a certain amount of connection or with a certain knowing. And so it's put you in a certain sort of space. Maybe you have mental BDE where you're just like really smart and everyone's always like, "Oh my gosh, you're so smart." And then you're like, "Yeah, thanks, I know." Or maybe you got physical BDE where you're really like athletic or something, right? Not necessarily physiological BDE, but maybe you also got some physiological BDE. But if you don't know how to use it, then, you know, I think most people would prefer like MDE or even like SRDE that is like proficient than like why am I saying E? People would prefer like SD or SRD or like more MD, more AD, like average D over like a BD that is like doesn't know how to use it. Because once you like, you get to a certain size and girth, if you careless down there, you can mess somebody up and then it ruins the whole experience. Unless you're into that, then that you go for it. But be careful because people get hurt very seriously. And it comes a time, and it also reminds me of like when you're the most knowledgeable, when you're the smartest, and you go in for a job interview, and on paper you're perfect, but you don't get the job, and it's because your attitude is not that great. You don't really work well with others. And at the end of the day, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if no one wants to work with you, then no one's going to work with you. And so again, I feel like in all of this is going back to like a skeletized masculine energy where it's just like if masculine energy is the house, then like there aren't even any walls. It's just the foundation and the support beams, and that's it. Like there's no roof, there's no ceiling, there's no plaster on the walls, no drywall, no insulation, nothing. It's just like the frame of a house, and someone's like, "Here, it's perfect," and it's like, okay, well, there's nothing that separates me from the elements, and so like if it rains, I'd be better off in my car or in like anything that actually has a covering on it, and not just like what it would look like. Like that's what the masculine energy was like in the past. Because again, it feels like it's more about the appearance and it feels like it's more about conforming to whatever rather than like substance, rather than like the people who are going to live in this. Like, how do I want them to feel? Like, for the people who's like, I want to design houses. Like I want to make a house that someone sees and they go, wow, like I could build a family in this house. I could do this in this house. I could do that in this house. Like I want to build a house that dreams can live in and grow in rather than just like, well, it's a place to stay. And it's like I've been looking at a lot of like mansions and luxury homes. Some of them are like it seems like they're expensive just for like being expensive. I saw a $700,000 little house and I'm like, this is $700,000. And even the realtor, she was like, they say in the business the house is worth as much as someone pays for it. So if someone pays $700,000 for it, then that's a $700,000 house. If they pay $1 million for a $500,000 house, then that's $1 million house because that's what they paid for it. And then I saw this other house. It was only $1 million, but it looks on par with or better than some of the tens of millions of dollars, or at least one, like multi-million dollar homes. And it's this energy of like adding substance. It adds substance. And this is an energy of like being led by spirit the whole way. And it's a little bit carrot on the stick energy, honestly. It does read a little bit like carrot on the stick because spirit is always in front of you and looking back at you like, okay, you mastered that one, good. Now the next one. You mastered that one, good. Now the next one. You mastered that one, good. Now the next one. Now the next one. Now the next one. But this is the last one before you claim this one. With this one, like that's the level of mastery where like this is the completion of the apprenticeship. But after you complete your apprenticeship, you still have to go out into the world and make your own name. You can only you'll only find success under the name of your master for so long. Eventually you have to make your own name. And if you're continuously like using someone else's name, it's like at a certain point you should be able to have a body of work that speaks for itself. Or there should be something that's like, oh, that's who you are. It's like, oh yeah, like they got it from that person. Let's call her Susie. I don't know why. They got it from Susie. Like, oh my gosh, like, where'd you get that, Susie? And now everyone knows Susie. Instead of being like, Susie used to work under Rachel. Like, oh my gosh, we all love Rachel Ray. Her cooking utensils are amazing. And this person worked with Rachel, so, they should be good, right? And maybe we don't have to pay Rachel prices. But like worked under Susie, apprenticed under Susie, or worked under Rachel, the apprentice of Rachel, knockoff Rachel, bargain brand Rachel, generic Rachel. Eventually, Susie has to become Susie, or Susie becomes Suzette, or Suzanne, or Susanna, or Savannah, or maybe Susie was like Sal. Who knows? It becomes about making a name for yourself, like building out your own brand type of energy. But again, it does feel very carrot on the stick because in this energy, it's like, okay, spirit, but like, when am I going to get there? Like you keep telling me one more, one more, do this, do that. But like, when am I going to get there? And I'm not going to say you never will, but eventually you get to the point where you get that one where you really begin to create more and where your efforts are recognized. But again, you don't get to that point until you complete that apprenticeship. Because as long as you're an apprentice, you're working under the master. And it reminds me of what do they call them in pharmacy? Because I have a lot of pharmacist friends because I lived in the dorm where the pharmacy learning community was. Um, I think it's the rotations, and it's like how they have to work in like in their role, but they don't get paid. Like they have to work a lot of hours and they don't get paid for it. And at the same time, they still pay tuition. So they pay the school to not make money while they're going and doing what is free work for someone else, but they get the experience and the hours for whatever licensure or whatever. But after that, then they make their own money, right? And they make a lot. They make good money. There was this one dude. I was like, man, he a pharmacist now. He got pharmacist money, and he ain't look bad. I'm just playing. Bottom of the deck though is the Archangel Commander, which is a recent fave. What's at the top? Ooh, the burden one. We're in the year of the metal ox now. Burden one right there. That is Jupiter, Saturn. That's Saturn in Sagittarius. Saturn in Sagittarius feels like a 10 of Wands energy. Sagittarius is like, I want to be free. Can't tie me down, can't hold me down, can't be tamed. And then Saturn is like, watch me. And then Sagittarius is like, no, no. But then it's like, well, Sagittarius are slowing down for a reason, right? Integrate it, you'll be freer later. Maybe there's something that we're restricted by, but we don't even necessarily recognize it as restrictive because it's so integrated into what our foundation has become or what the norm is. And so it's like it creates these spaces that we don't even necessarily think that we can move out of. It gets us to paint ourselves even smaller into a box that we don't have to be in the first place, but it establishes itself as the box. So we don't even think that like there's more. And it's like we get really creative. It's a Virgo energy in that way. Or that's how I feel Virgo energy sometimes because Virgo can compartmentalize. And so it's like it gets really creative with like how it navigates within the box or how it like goes outside of the box or how it structures and organizes things. But at a certain point you realize that like you're not bound to that at all. So it feels like an integration. Oh my gosh! Oh, LOL. It feels like an integration of that Virgo Pisces polarity because it brings in that creative, compartmentalizing, factoring, analyzing. I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's compartmentalizing, but I feel like compartmentalizing has a kind of negative connotation around it. Ability from Virgo. It's like Virgo is an energy that will infinitely expand inward because it makes really, really, really good use of the space. But Pisces is an energy that expands infinitely outward. And so it's like we've gotten really good at Virgo, but now it's time to bring all of that outside. And so the easiest way to do that is to magnify and to amplify and to expand what we've already built and make it bigger. I guess the quickest way too. Not necessarily. Eh, eh, it depends. And you can be on the Pisces side where you do a lot of things externally, but now you're learning to put that inside and to go even deeper. And the reason why I was like LOL is because Knight of Cups, mutable water, Pisces energy, Eight of Pentacles, literally Sun in Virgo. Virgo and Pisces energy, it's right here. And that was Sagittarius. And I was like, well, what's the Sagittarius and Gemini? I'm liking this. I'm liking this a lot, actually. So now let's read the I Ching. No. Don't mind me. So this is the Eight of Orbs and the Knight of Chalices. So this is, excuse me, Mountain over Wind. Mountain over Wind is interesting. Because usually wind is over the mountain, right? Mountain over wind looks like number 44. No, 48. Oh, sorry. Nope, that's water. Oh my gosh. 57, gentle force. I think. Pretty sure. Number 57, gentle force. And I will confirm before I read this. Here we go. This is mountain over wind. No, that's double wind. Hold up. Hold up. I'll do it this way. Oh, I went way too far. I went way too far. I went left one instead of going right one. Here we go. It's decay, number 18. Well, I like this though, because that's the thing. So, gentle force, I think that was double wind. It was double wind. And now we're going to decay, mountain over wind. So it speaks of the erosive power of wind, and the erosive power of water was featured what, yesterday or the day before. Whenever I think it was yesterday, when I was talking about how water can seep into things, and then when it freezes, it expands, and that's how one way that water can destroy things or transform things. Air has a similar ability to erode things as water. They're both fluid, but air doesn't necessarily freeze. And so with air, you get that movement based surface level erosion. Now, air can also flow in between cracks. And so you can get an internal and external erosion, but air doesn't necessarily have the same expansive qualities and properties that water does. And water is one of the few things that expands as it freezes. Most things, when they freeze, they shrink, they get smaller. If we're talking about BDE and SDE, if you if it's cold, then you may experience some shrinkage, I believe is the scientific term, the technical term. But air doesn't necessarily do that. No, air can be cold though. And so with a biological material, it can cause things to shrink. Or if it's hot, so air can carry temperature. It mobilizes, what is that? Either accelerating or decelerating energy. And what fluid air does is it actually improves heat transfer, convection. It makes it a lot quicker. Because and like also like if you dry something, still convection, convective drying, it also makes that quicker because when it's stagnant, it'll saturate. And when it saturates, then it can go either way. So what moving air does is it removes a body's ability to reach equilibrium with its environment because the movement in the air, it's constantly changing. Not necessarily great for this energy because that inability to form an equilibrium with your environment, that's a bit of that carrot on the stick energy where it feels like it's constantly sort of out of reach, or you're constantly having to take care of and address other concerns while you're going for the main one. And it's like no matter how much sort of water you try to pour into it, it just dries up immediately. Type of energy. Like how when it's cold outside and when it's windy and cold outside, like your skin will dry out quicker, your lips might chat quicker, potentially. Type of energy. And so we're going from that double wind now to this energy of decay. But decay isn't always bad. Look at the Grand Canyon, right? erosion isn't always bad. They say that one drop wears away the stone. And one drop wearing away the stone, it's an energy of like, it's an energy that's very similar to like when you're constantly with someone for years and face to face over the years, you don't notice the changes. But if you look back, or if you haven't been able to experience someone every day, you're able to realize how much it's changed. Just like, when you growing up, when there's people who you haven't seen in a long time, like when you don't see growth, your brain doesn't form that continuous image of that person. Excuse me. Going back to the movie theater, like when you're looking at the film, it's a series of static images. But on the screen, it's fluid and dynamic. And so there's this, I don't know if it's static or dynamic. I would say take that bit as it resonates for you. Either something has been static to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, like it just seemed like so much changed overnight. You look so much different. It feels so much different than it did like 5 years ago, the last time I interacted with it. Or it's dynamic in that like you're constantly updating this thing to the point where it can change so much and you don't even really fully realize it or notice it because you have so much interaction with it. And so sometimes we need a change of pace. Sometimes we may enter a little bit more of a dynamic phase. Sometimes there may be some stagnancy and separation so that we can perceive that growth. Because growth, without us being able to perceive it, sometimes it can keep us from realizing how much certain things have changed. Anyway, that's a lot. Take it as it resonates. Decay. An infestation results in the decay of matter. Dogma causes degeneration. Hey, there's that empty system. Not empty, sorry. There's that masculine energy. Dogma it's like Hierophant in reverse type of energy. Um, that's funny because it was like last year. It was months ago. I don't know why we came upon the word dogma. Maybe my dad said my mom was like dogmatic or something. And she was like, I'm not dogmatic. And then they were like, Patrick, what does dogmatic mean? I was like, what? Like, what? Dogma causes degeneration. There has been spoilage and degeneration, so it is critical to take action immediately. The father is not fit to lead. The successor, son, must rise to the occasion. Great obstacles to come. Prevent further atrophy. Strive to be virtuous. Do not go forward if you seek power. Go forward only if you rise with pure heart. Undertake the daunting challenge. For the critical timing of events, look to Jupiter, the spring season, and the midnight hours. Well, Jupiter is in that Aquarian stellium right now. It just had that conjunction with Saturn on, like, the Christmas star. Spring, at least here in the US, is coming. It actually feels like spring today. Not like spring, but like snow is melting. It's warmer outside. The roads fairly clear. I mean, the roads have been fairly clear because the trucks have been out. But still, snow is melting. It feels like spring is gonna be here. I haven't experienced a winter that has been so winter so consistently for years. And it's like appropriately like in its season too. And it's like people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cold." It's okay, well, depending on where you are, because it is, it's been snowing in places where maybe it shouldn't be, or it doesn't typically snow. But here in the Midwest, where we get winter, or we used to, those people are like, "Oh, when is this gonna end?" And it's like, it's like y'all forgot what. It's almost like y'all forgot what winter is. Like this was winter back in the day when the seasons happened in their season. And it takes me back to that Queen of Pentacles with the New World Order. It feels like something has changed. Something has been righted. Something is shifting. Course is redirecting, but it's not redirecting. It's like the course is redirecting back to what it was originally set on before our way was lost. And again, South Node is in Sagittarius right now. It feels like a shadow aspect of Sagittarian energy because Sagittarian energy is extremely linear. And so it's like Sagittarian energy doesn't make too many jumps or leaps. It doesn't curve or change too much. Gemini energy is all over the place. And so it's like if you want to divert Sagittarian energy, what you would have to do is you would have to feed it little lies over an extended period of time because it's not very flexible. And so it's like you get it to move little by little by little, and it's so linear that in Sagittarius's mind, it's been on the same path the entire time. But if you look outside, you can see where those deviations started to add up over time. And then it leads you completely off path. And again, that takes me back to that static versus dynamic. Because when it's dynamic, you don't necessarily pick it up. It's very easy to let go of because your brain gets constant interaction with it. But when it's static, it's like if you see it here and you project it for it to be here in the future, but it ends up here, then you're like, wait, like that's when your brain is like, wow, like you've changed so much in the time I haven't seen you. Because now your brain has this engagement and it has this engagement and it's trying to reconcile the two. But when it's constant, it's like slowly building up. You don't even like really notice it. But here, when you're here, that's when it's like, oh, like how do we get here? And if you pay attention, it was this slight incline here, and a slight moment here, and a slight moment there, where it just like sort of naturally rose up over time slowly, where it was supposed to progress laterally. And so now it's this energy here of like bridging that gap. And it feels like energetic. It feels spiritual. I mean, it's the Knight of Cups. Like, who knows what spirit is going to do? They say that the Lord and Spirit works in mysterious ways. If you're apprenticed to the Spirit, you got lots of ways of mystery to master. Maybe I'll title this "Mastering Mystery." I don't know. I'm so bad with titles and thumbnails and everything else. I'm just like, sometimes, sometimes I don't put a thumbnail on it. Sometimes I don't even put a title. Because I'm just like, Eh, I leave that part to the creatives, right? I like to dip into some stuff and I like to get an idea and play with it, but I'm not necessarily one for like elaborate, fancy things necessarily. That's why it's like it's static versus dynamic. Now, that's shadow Sagittarian energy. That's also the shadow of Hierophant energy. But like I was saying earlier, it's like masculine energy is like it's getting a wake up call. It's snapping out of it. It's like, oh my gosh, like what have we been doing? What good does it do to build these houses that are worth millions of dollars if no one actually buys them? Now I'm just out of billions of dollars because I've built so many $1 million houses. Like I had this get rich quick scheme in my mind where it's like, well, if I build a few $1 million houses and if I sell them, then I'll have $1 billion eventually. But it's like, okay, well, like you never stopped or thought to think like, what if no one buys the houses? What if people don't like the houses? What if everyone moves out of this area? Then you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't consider that. I didn't think about that. I was so focused on doing what I was doing and building what I was building. I never thought of like whether or not this actually had a place in society. And that's why, when it comes to building something and when you're getting investors, You have to prove that there's a market for it. If you can't prove that there's a market for it, no one's going to shovel money or like throw money into it if they're not going to get a return on that. So, anyway, that's where I'm going to leave this. See, I'm not. I talk too much. That's where I'm going to leave that. I am going to shuffle this up and get a final message, like a final card, and I'll leave that for you to fill in how you see fit. And again, it's a question of like how we've been raised, what we've grown up thinking, and the systems that we're living in. Because in a lot of ways, it's like many, many, many multi-layered systems of separation. And it's like it's a that hierophant was like real SDE, like almost non-existent DE, and not non-existent DE when we're like encroaching upon like feminine territory. And not to say that anyone's that gender and sex are the same or whatever, and not whatever, because I know that that's like legitimate. Not to get into the too nitty gritty, right? But it's like it's so small. It's like it doesn't even like. Why do you have to destroy the world around you just to make you feel like you have some kind of anything? When if you contributed to the world, it's like you would get what you wanted by contributing rather than conquering or commanding. And so masculine energy is it's going under a little bit of a reworking. And we've all got masculine energy. And that's the systems of the world, governments from the top to the bottom, from the internal to the external. But it feels like it's in a space to make things right. Okay. So I saw this card at the cut. It's the contender, the Five of Wands. The Five of Wands is a fight for the throne. It's it's like I get these words and then they disappear out of my brain. It's a fight for the throne. There's a prophecy in this deck. They come like the wise men at the Three of Pentacles, they get this prophecy that there will be a new crowned prince who will become the king. And so this is the competition. The Six of Wands is victory, but at the Six of Wands, it's revealed that the crown prince is actually a crown princess. Now she will still be king, but she will be king. It won't be him. He won't be king. She will be king. And she's not going to change her title to suit whatever weird like rules or laws that mankind has going on, right? We're not going to make her a queen just because she's a girl. She's going to be the king and she's going to be female. But that's the Five of Wands energy. This is like the fight for it, the competition. It's a space of proving. It's proving. I would say that, we prove by being holding to our by having integrity, by holding to our values and our morals and our ethics, but also allowing them to evolve beyond what the system around us has kind of sort of like framework them to be. New World Order came back out, which is why I was like, oh yeah. But the card that came out with this is the Vagabond. I think the Vagabond energy, it just speaks to how like even a lot of the people who made it in the old energy were still lacking something, still missing something, still trying to fill some kind of void, still not satisfied, still not happy. Even those who won lost. And it's almost like we have to sort of treat it that way instead of like victors and losers. And it's like, oh, you don't understand because you were the winner. Like I was the victim. Our experiences were different. And it is true. It's extremely valid and extremely true that experiences are different within the system. Also, they're manufactured to be different within the system. And it takes me back again to those who would kind of sort of betray their own just to get favor from above and to try to elevate in society, and who will buy into that so deeply that they will fight themselves in order to try to gain favor from people who look at both of them the same. From the top, you're indistinguishable. So it doesn't matter how good you get, you're still going to be what you are. So there's no benefit to turning against each other and killing each other or slighting each other or whatever. Going back to the show that I'm watching, right? It's like when you realize that everyone's sort of a victim, it opens up the space for a compassion that exists outside for the need of retribution or vindication. And so it becomes more about setting the scales even. So now we get back to the justice energy that we saw the first time. It becomes more about setting the scales even rather than like disproportionately leaning them the other way. And we engage with that and we interact with that in whatever way within ourselves that we need to. Um, there's a lot of complex problems that have not so complex solutions. I think the complexity in some of the solutions to some of our problems comes in us accepting them. It's like most of the complexity is heart based and like it's based and rooted in the human condition more so than like a solution. And so in that way, it's like again, it's that integration of both Piscean and Virgo energy. Because I think Piscean would be, and it's not that Virgos are heartless, but it's like Pisces energy would get more lost in like trying to. Oh, one second. I'm sorry. Hold up. That was disgusting, and I apologize. But if you watch this, phlegm warning, it might happen. Um, I think Pisces can get lost in like meeting the emotional needs of everyone, and Virgo can get lost in meeting the physical needs of everyone. And so for masculine energy, it becomes this need to accommodate both. And again, it feels like that's where most of the complexity comes in. But I feel like that complexity can be reduced by our readiness and our willingness to accept certain things, right? Because if we're trying to bridge this gap between where we found ourselves and where we could have been, then I think that's why it's kind of a little bit about South Node and Sagittarius, North Node and Gemini right now, because Gemini can flip just like that. I think Gemini is less worried about continuity, and Sagittarius is more about like this doesn't logically flow from the last step. Like we can't just immediately turn 180 degrees or even 90 degrees and do anything. We have to go degree by degree. And if we could go half degree or even smaller than that, a tenth of a degree or a millionth of a degree at a time, like that would satisfy me. And again, it's funny because that goes back to the Saturn and Sagittarius energy. Because as free as Sagittarius is also bound in a lot of ways. Sagittarius is kind of a super fixed energy, a little bit, not extreme. Well, in some ways, it's super fixed. Um, but Gemini is like, no, like let's just do it. And I think our ability to accept discontinuity within our lives is going to be the most key or the most influential sort of factor in the speed of the resolution of some things. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with my good buddy, Mr. Sparkles emoji, summer 2019, when he was like there, because he was in archaeology and philosophy. And he was like, he said, there's this one philosopher who theorizes that, like, life is just like random split decision moments. It's not really continuous, but our brain sort of forms these, or does its best to form these moments of continuity between these 2 points, rather than life being a continuous sort of stream. Because the continuous stream, that's more Sagittarian. It's more, it's flatter. There's less, the like amplitude of deviation is a lot lower than like if we're this point and then that point and then this point and then that point. Like if it all has to be smooth, you're not gonna get up there that quickly. Like we're not gonna do this. Sagittarian energy is not gonna do that because that's not how arrows work. And Sagittarius isn't Capricorn, so Sagittarius isn't gonna do that either. Because Sagittarius, like, that's too steep for Sagittarius. This is too unpredictable for Sagittarius. Sagittarius is like, that's going to be how fastly or how slowly it moves for us. Let me make sure I'm drinking water. And maybe that goes back into mastering the mysteries, mastering the mysterious ways when we don't need for things to be so continuous, when we allow ourselves the freedom to embrace and to create or co-create sudden miraculous chains of events, sudden miraculous changes of events. Now I guess the mastering the mysteries comes in understanding that even the sudden and miraculous is still a chain of events. It's just more subtle. One thing will always lead to another thing, but it's like you can work behind the scenes on some of those things where space time isn't so linearly bound. Take it as it resonates. But when you're working in that, when you're working internally, truly internally, then things on the outside just start to click and sort of line up in a way that they wouldn't necessarily if you worked externally exclusively. So again, it feels very much like integrating Virgo and Pisces energy and coming in the middle that makes spirituality very practical. And it makes even practicality spiritual. So that's what I got. I feel like that's a solid enough foundation to like fill in any of the things. And it's not to fill in, like we all fill in the blanks ourselves. Take it as it resonates, fill in the blanks where you need to fill in blanks. I hope it brings you some sort of whatever you need it to bring you. And I will catch y'all later. I hope you have a good whatever, whenever. And I hope that you are acting in alignment to make that which you wish to experience your reality. And I'm excited to be feeling even better tomorrow. All right. Bye.